delayed it, about 2 weeks.
All right, gentlemen, let's get started. I've got 9:32 Verizon Standard Time, as I call it. I go off my cell phone, so Verizon Standard Time. So, hey, good morning. Come on in, have a seat. All right, so I appreciate everybody coming out today. This is, got a couple of disclaimers. This is more for the folks that will be watching the replay more so than the folks in this room. This is not a state required, check your mute, county required item here. Okay, I thought I just turned it off there. Are you hearing me now? Okay. All right. Okay, this is not a required thing. It's something I wanted to do. We had the City and County Managers Association meeting a couple of weeks ago. Had some small group kind of breakout sessions. A couple of the other county managers that have sort of mentored me suggested this, and I like the idea. I'm a teacher at heart. Everybody on both sides of my family, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, they're all teachers. So that's something that I enjoy as well. And a couple disclaimers for the folks, the citizens that watch this. This is not a candidate forum or a debate. There will be no stump speeches, nothing like that. This is simply a informational for the candidates. There may be a candidate forum or debate at some point in the future. I've heard rumors about Debbie at the library trying to put one together to host at the library, but that would not be a county government function. That would be some other group would be handling that. Coordinating everybody's schedule is not easy. A lot of you work full-time. I ask the voters, if someone is not here, don't hold that against them. I had to have it, I wasn't going to have it this early, but I've got jury duty starting Monday. I didn't want to schedule it and then not be able to show up myself because of jury, so I had to move it up a little. So I appreciate everybody that made it, but if somebody's not here, I ask the voters not to hold that against them. So. All right, so let's get started here. Got a little introduction material. We'll go about 45 minutes. We'll take a break, then we'll go another 45 minutes. Should be about an hour and a half in total, hopefully. So overview of the county, of course, founded in 1859. We have about 235 square miles, a little less than 11,000 citizens. That makes us sixth smallest by either measure. Over 60% of all that 235 square miles is certified as farmland. That means they're in one of the state or federal agricultural programs. There's probably, there's farmland that's not in one of those programs, but over 60% of our land is certified as farmland. Just a few varying stats here. High school graduation rate, we are right in the middle of the pack. You can see compared to the state and compared to our surrounding counties, right in the middle of the pack, 56 out of 100. All this PowerPoint, anybody that wants the PowerPoint, we'll have it up on the county website in a day or two, so if there's something you don't get. Residents with a bachelor's degree, that sort of goes along with the high school graduation rate. Again, we're 54th out of 100, right in the middle of the pack. Right in the middle of the pack as far as our surrounding neighbors go as well. So basically 1 out of every 8 people has a bachelor's degree. K-12 spending per student, it's a number where we're higher than the state average there, 30th out of 100 counties there. Significantly higher than our neighbors. That's one area the previous boards have been very proud of, that our K-12 support has been very good. Income per capita, again, we're a little lower in state numbers, but we're right in the middle of our neighbors. I mean, you guys know, Raleigh and Charlotte has a much higher per capita income, and as you go west, it gets lower and lower, but we're fine compared to our neighbors there. One area we're really weak is health insurance. We're the 4th worst as far as uninsured folks. But we're not really that far off from our neighbors. So that's another thing that as you go further west, that gets worse. Okay. And the median age of our population, we are the 12th oldest county in the state. And we've actually gotten older from the last time I presented this information. So median age of the county is 48. September of this year, I will turn, guess what? 48. So I'm right on the median there. So a little bit older than our neighbors, not much, but again, you know that may have heard the term silver tsunami. That's a term nationwide about the aging baby boomers. It's affecting every area of life. It hits us a little harder simply because we're a smaller group. You know, you can't hide any outliers in a small group like those. That's why our age is a little higher. But that's a good thing, you know. A lot of experience, a lot of advantage. We have a lot of 58 and 62 and 68-year-old retirees in this county that we can leverage for committees and clubs and boards. And got a call the other day after the article in the paper about the Courthouse Citizens Committee. A guy named Bill Clark, he's a retired county manager from down east somewhere, lives in Roaring Gap now, called and said, hey, I'm happy to. I don't want to join the committee. I'm not looking for that level of commitment, but if you need to have lunch a couple of times and run some ideas. I just built a courthouse a few years ago, so, you know, all kinds of resources out there. All right, so I'm going to talk about me first, then we'll talk about you. That's the way I roll. So let's talk about county manager a little bit, roles and responsibilities. These are all per the general statute. So I've paraphrased them a little. They're less lawyerly than what they are in the statute. But
Thank you.
my role is to hire, fire, suspend, promote most county employees, and we'll expand on that as we go through. Oversee most county departments. I'm supposed to attend all commissioners' meetings and make recommendations on any pending action when requested to do so, and see that any board actions are faithfully executed. I also am the chief budget officer by statute. So I prepare and submit an annual budget to the board. Now, the Board of Commissioners, you have full line item veto authority on the budget. You can change any number on there, or every number on there, or no numbers on there. So that your all's budget at the end of the day. The audit, we are to prepare the audit, and I submit that to the commissioners. Any other reports or information or duties assigned by the commissioners. So that's my role. A little bit about me, personally. I've been here since October 2016. I was 5.5 years in Lee County, Virginia as Community Development Director prior to that. 21 years as a banker prior to that. From Johnson City, I live here in Twin Oaks. I have an accounting degree from the greatest university in the world, East Tennessee State University. MBA from Clemson, additional graduate hours at Kansas State University as well. My philosophy is all about open communication. If you join the Board of Commissioners, you will receive 5 to 10 emails per week from me every week. Mark and John can attest to that. It's at least that many. So I want to keep you informed. Some of them have very important information. You know, there's a fire here or something like that. Some of them are upcoming events. Hey, there's a ribbon cutting at the community college next week. Sometimes it's just interesting articles that I found in journals that are relevant to issues we've been discussing. I'm also passionate about telling our story to the citizens. So I haven't been 30 years in local government coming from a business background. It's all about marketing and telling your story and selling your product. We've just started live streaming the commissioner meetings. They are live on the internet as they happen now. We'll soon be live on the local government channel as well. I like to put out frequent press releases. One of my colleagues in Virginia used to say, I put out a press release every time we change the light bulb. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I like to keep the public informed. They need to know what we're doing. If I'm going to send them a tax bill and ask them to pay it, they should know what we're doing with that money. I do a YouTube recap show after every county commissioners meeting. It also runs on the local government channel if you've seen it. That's the short attention span theater. If you can't handle the 2-hour commissioner meeting, you can watch my 15-minute recap of it. We've had social services coming in every month and presenting on their different programs and services. Again, that's probably one of the most misunderstood departments by a lot of the public, so we want to shed some light on that. And then we've really emphasized buying locally, and we track that on the website. We have a spotlight business at each commissioner's meeting. A local business owner comes in, tells us a little bit about their business. My management style, I am a delegator. My department managers manage their departments. I oversee that. They come to me with questions, but I can't necessarily tell you the exact protocol for every minute operation that we have in every department. My department managers manage the departments. All right, enough about me. It's hard for me to, quit talking about myself, but we'll talk about the county commissioners now. Roles and responsibilities. Okay. So a little background, North Carolina is considered a Dillon's rule state. There are two ends of the perspective, Dillon's rule and home rule. And North Carolina is considered a Dillon's rule state. The basic gist of that is counties cannot do anything unless the state legislature specifically authorizes us to do something. Home rule state's the opposite. You can do anything unless the legislature specifically says you can't. Tennessee is a home rule state. North Carolina and Virginia are both Dillon's rule states. So we only can exercise the powers that are explicitly granted to us by the state. We are considered a political subdivision of the state government. One of your roles as county commissioner is organizing the county government. You can create, change, abolish, consolidate offices, boards, commissions, unless that is specifically not allowed by law. An example, Caldwell County in January had a public hearing. They were considering abolishing their social services board and making the county commissioners the social services board. They had a public hearing on that in January. They wound up not doing it. But they had that right to do that. They could do that. So that's one example from recently. Caldwell's one of the board meetings that are on local government channel. I watched a little bit of that the other day. Stan had emailed me and said they were discussing it, so I wanted to watch that meeting and see what happened.
When they threatened with a lot of loss of federal funds?
There were a couple of social services board members that spoke and talked about that. Counties have done it and survived, so I don't think it's as bad as it could be, but I don't recommend it. I like social services being an independent agency. I think it's better for everybody. But if you're on the board and at least 3 of you want to explore it, we'll explore it, but I don't recommend that. You can also combine duties of the same officer unless it's restricted by law. An example of that, by statute, the sheriff cannot be appointed county manager. You can't be both sheriff and county manager. So I don't, just one of those things. If you wanted to make the sheriff the county manager, you'd have to resign as sheriff. Okay. You can't discontinue or assign elsewhere functions specifically assigned by the law. Okay. Also, care and use of county property. So upkeep of property, deciding, we're going to develop property, we're going to sell property. We are selling 2 pieces of county property right now that we decided we didn't need. Personnel. So basically, the personnel policies, procedures, pay classifications, all that would be voted and approved by the county commission. I would then administer the personnel program. Again, I hire and fire most of the department heads. Human resources director helps me with that. So again, pretty much anything that comes before you all as a board, the budget, personnel policy, you have full line item veto authority on anything to change, alter, erase, and again, unless it's something that's specifically prohibited by law, you have a lot of authority there. There are basically 3 types of actions that the board will take. First is an order, and that's more informal. So a couple of you, whether it's at a meeting or whether it's in my office, hey, can we take a look at this? Can you pull this report for me? That's an order. That's something more informal. A resolution is an official administrative act. We undertake a resolution to borrow money, to accept a grant, things like that. Sometimes they're ceremonial. At our next meeting, we're honoring JD's Restaurant on their 20th anniversary. That's a ceremonial resolution, so that's an example of that. An ordinance is like a resolution, but it makes new law. So the last ordinance the board adopted was the brunch bill that allows alcohol sales at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings. That was an ordinance, so that changed the law. Okay, so that's a little bit different. Okay. Citizen-appointed boards. We have a couple of different boards. There are boards like the policy and operating boards. An example of that would be the planning commission. They have specific duties that are in the statutes that they do. You have little control over what they do. You do appoint the members, but you can't make the planning commission hold a public hearing. You can't make them vote a certain way on a public hearing. Advisory boards are like the Agriculture Advisory Board, the Veterans Advisory Board, things like that. You do have a lot of authority over them, more so than the operating boards. You have pretty much wide latitude to appoint advisory boards. This new courthouse advisory committee is an example. It's in a kind of an ad hoc committee. The board appointed it. They can, next meeting, they can do away with it if they want to. You know, you have a wide, since it's an advisory board, you have wide latitude on those. As a commissioner, you will be on lots and lots of boards, and we'll look at it. We'll show you a list here later on. When you are appointed as a commissioner to the board, it's important that you remember you are acting as a commissioner, not as your individual self. So it's important any action you take on that board, you're voting the way that you think the Board of Commissioners wants you to vote. You should be consulting with your other board members and things like that. So now, if you're already on the board as a citizen, you get elected, that's a little different situation. But if you are appointed to whatever board as county commissioner, your actions on that board should reflect the Board of Commissioners' points of view. All right. Next category, this is a big one. How much time is it going to take, right? How much, Mark? How much, John? More than you expected, right?
Just meet 2 times a month.
More than you expected, right?
I would guesstimate 10 hours a week.
All right, so first of all, we have meetings. Those are covered by we're required by statute to meet at least once a month. Allegheny County Commissioners meet twice a month currently. First Monday of the month at 6:30 p.m., third Monday of the month at 10 a.m. So that's 24 meetings. Normally, the first July meeting is generally not held. We'll talk about why we get through the budget in June. We've seen each other 15 times. It's time to take a little break. So that's generally 23 regular meetings per year. Special meetings and emergency meetings may be called at any time. We also meet in joint session with town council 3 to 4 times per year. We're going to do it 3 times this year. Okay, during budget season in May and June, expect another 5 to 7 additional meetings and work sessions. We sometimes have off-site retreats 1 or 2 times a year. Actually got one on the 20th that's going to be half a day. So therefore, I would expect 30 to 35 meetings per year. Our regular board meetings average around 2 hours in length. I'd love to get that down, but they go where they go. You don't know for sure how long they're going to be. Budget work sessions, we typically schedule those for around 3 hours. And retreats are often all day, although next week, or the 20th, we've got one that's only scheduled for half a day.
Can I interject a little?
You may. Anybody can comment at any time.
On the meetings, if you get a hold of the scheduled meetings that we have coming up, and you say, man, these are a lot of day meetings, I can't make them. Well, those are all determined by the consensus of the board. So those, going forward, those can be changed within the board. The 2 that can't be changed when they're set up is the regular monthly meetings, the first and the third Monday. But they can be changed in December whenever we do our organization. So every meeting can be changed with, majority of the board. So I just wanted to share that with you, so you don't have to think that every meeting I see and every time I see it, the way it's going to be from here going forward. We have agreed on these times that are published in our current calendar, but new boards can agree on different times. So I just want to put that out there.
And sometimes, we have to move a meeting. It's a holiday. Monday's a holiday or something, so we'll move the meeting. We'll talk. We have to do that with advance notice. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. I would expect to be named to 3 to 5 of the advisory boards. And I've given you a couple of examples of some of the advisory boards. Some of those meet monthly, some meet quarterly, some meet as needed. Most of those do require the presence of 1 or more county commissioners. So this is the current list here, and I have a handout. You don't need to write. I have a handout of what the same list here. So you see everybody has at least 4 committees, and most people have around 5, except the chairman is on more, but certain boards require the chairman to be on those boards. So if you want to be the chairman, you're going to be on more boards and committees. But generally, I would expect around 5 committee appointments. Okay? And we'll give you a list of all the committees here as we leave. Learned in my years as corporate trainer, if you've got handouts that don't match up with the screen, you hand those out at the end, otherwise they distract everybody. So we'll give you those later on. The board packets are generally made available the Wednesday before Monday's meeting. They can be in excess of 50 pages. Typical contents, minutes of previous meetings, potential resolutions, budget amendments, contracts, things like that. So you should, as a commissioner, you're expected to read all of the contents and be prepared to discuss each agenda item. Here's the bad news for some of you. The appointed officials in Allegheny County, of course, the county manager, I'm the chief administrator, day-to-day functions of the county. County attorney is our legal advisor, that's Donna Shoemate, has been for several years. The clerk to the board records and archives minutes of all the commissioners' meetings. That is currently Lauren Linker. She also is my administrative assistant as well. These are the only 3 county employees that are directly appointed by the Board of Commissioners. So I hate to burst anyone's bubble there. You can't replace the high school football coach. You can't replace the librarian. These are the 3 people that report directly to you, and they work at your pleasure. I mentioned earlier, as county manager, most county departments report to me. These are a list of the county departments that do report directly to me. There are also several departments that do not report to me. So the sheriff, register of deeds, clerk of court, those are elected officials. They report to the citizens. Social services director reports directly to the social services board. The elections director reports to the elections board. And the local elections board is appointed by the state elections board. So you have no input in that whatsoever. That's to keep any funny business out of the elections, as it should be. Soil and Water Conservation Director reports to their board, although sort of dotted line to me as well. And then the Extension Director of North Carolina State University and North Carolina A&T University jointly run the state extension program. So our Extension Director is a North Carolina State University employee, and she reports to her boss, the state extension director. Okay. So here's an example of some things the county commissioners cannot do. Hire, fire anyone directly other than the county manager, county attorney, or clerk to the board. You cannot decide to close a school. You cannot determine school curriculum. That's school board. That's the purview of the school board. You cannot eliminate any of our social services programs. The reason for that is we don't offer anything that's not mandated by either federal or state law. You cannot have any say in polling when the polls are open on election day, when early voting starts, when early voting ends. You have that's outside your purview as well. Cannot set office hours for any elected official, register of deeds, clerk of court. You have no authority on that. And again, this is just some examples, things that people, sometimes it surprises people, And several years ago in the county I used to live in Virginia, Commissioner ran, and of course he was kind of an offbeat guy anyway, but his whole point, he wanted to consolidate the schools. And that was his run. He was running for county commissioner because he could consolidate the schools. Wound up getting elected, and then found out he had no authority to consolidate the schools. And he was miserable for about 1.5 years, and then he resigned from the board. But that's one of the reasons I want to have this meeting here today. Okay, next topic, semi-related, is public records law. So the world is changing. The way we communicate is changing dramatically. So any document that conducts official government business is public record. Now, today's modern world, if I text Mark from my personal cell phone to his personal cell phone, but it has something to do with county business, that is a public record. A citizen could request a copy of that. So you want to keep that in mind. It doesn't matter that it's your personal email, your personal computer, your iPad, whatever. It is the nature or content of the information that determines whether it's public record not where it was sent from, what device, and what device it's going to. So text messages, any social media postings you make, anything like that that has to do with county business can be FOIA-able. Out of Freedom of Information Act is FOIA, is what we call it. So if I say FOIA-able, that means it can be requested by a citizen. Okay, so you want to keep that in mind. Open meetings law is related to that as well. So every time the county commission meets, it is a public meeting. It has to be advertised in advance, and it has to be, again, it has to be open to the public. Electronic meetings, which we really don't do electronic meetings. If we wanted to do like a conference call with the commissioners, we could do that under limited circumstances. We'd have to have a way for the public to dial into the conference call as well if we did that. Minutes must be kept of all meetings. They have to be announced in advance. There are limited circumstances. If there's a disaster, emergency, something like that, the commissioners could call a meeting. Tornado blew through. Commissioners could call a meeting with minimal notice, but generally there has to be advance notice. An agenda should be posted. Any citizen may request a copy of the board packet, the exact same board packet you have. Any citizen get a copy of it. In fact, we post them on the county website. So we have a sunshine list of 8 or 10 citizens that have requested a copy of the board packet. It predates doing it all electronically. So Lauren emails them, but it's just a link to the place on the county website. So your board packet is public document. Anybody can have a copy of it. If 3 or more of you get together and have lunch, discuss anything county business related, that is an open meeting, and you cannot do it without advertising it and having it open to the public. So you got to keep that in mind. If 3 of you sit together at the football game and cheer on the Trojans, that's okay. That's not a public meeting. Not that you can't ever be in the same room together. Just if you are discussing anything related to official county business, that is a public meeting and has to be treated as such. Okay. There are a few exceptions to that. Sometimes meetings will go into closed session. Certain items qualify for closed session. You have to open the meeting in open session, public, and then you can go into closed session and come back out if you want to. We do that, I don't know, maybe 1 out of every 4 or 5 meetings. We have some item in closed session, not that often. There are several reasons, some of them rarely come up. Attorney-client privilege comes up. I know the county was involved in a lawsuit on the New River mental health thing for several years, and there were several closed sessions to consult with the attorney. That's all been settled now, but that was an example. Location or expansion of businesses or industries. If we are considering assisting a company locating here, something like that, we can go into closed session to discuss that initially. We put that under the general bucket of economic development. Property acquisition. If we are thinking about buying a property and word gets out, the price of that property is going to double automatically, right? Because the county's a bottomless pit of money, right? We've got all the money that we ever could spend, and so we can double. So if we feel, if the making this public initially would compromise our negotiating position, we can go into closed session and discuss possible acquisition of a property. Now, if we decide to buy the property, that is a vote in open session that has to be made. Okay. Employment contracts, specific personnel. So my job interview, for example, 2 of you in this room were in those. So the Board of Commissioners had a meeting. They opened the meeting in open session, went into closed session. We had my job interview. We discussed my, references and salaries and all that kind of stuff. And then the board came. I left. The board came back out into open session, did whatever. Not everything personnel-wise, though, qualifies for closed session. Every county employee's name, salary, job title, how long they've worked here, all that is public information. So any citizen can request a copy of that at any time. Now, you can't get someone's whole personnel file, so you can't get their social security number. You can't get if their spouse is covered on the medical insurance or not. But a lot of that stuff is public record. Of course, any of those other things. Alleged criminal misconduct, potential terrorist activity, those hopefully don't come up too often. But those are other things that qualify for closed session exceptions. A couple of items about closed session. it is not illegal for you to come out of closed session and tell everything to your brother, post it on Facebook. There's nothing illegal about that. It's generally considered unethical and unprofessional to discuss closed session information outside closed session. Now, if you divulge personal information about an employee, that employee may have action against us. If we signed a non-disclosure agreement, maybe with a company thinking about locating here, and we're glad that the company may have remedies in the contract, breach of contract. But generally, it's not illegal, but it is deemed unprofessional to discuss that outside of closed session. I don't tell my wife. She has no interest in county government anyway, which makes it easy. If she was very interested in county government, it'd be a lot harder not to tell her. But closed session, we do keep minutes. This is different from Virginia. Virginia does not keep closed session minutes. North Carolina, we do keep closed session minutes, but they are far less detailed than open session minutes. They are very, very brief. And those minutes stay sealed basically until the situation is over. So if we are talking about potential incentives to recruit ABC company to come to town, and once they have announced and they're here, that process is resolved, those minutes could be made public at that time. Sometimes it's years. If it's attorney-client stuff, it might be 10 years down the road before the situation would be resolved. Yeah. Meeting agendas. Our agendas are official records of our meeting, and they will be archived forever. Again, they're generally prepared Tuesday before the Monday meeting. Noon on Monday is our general deadline for inclusion if you want something included on the agenda. Okay. We have a couple of different categories of agenda items: general business and the consent agenda. If you want something included on that, generally we want multiple commissioners to agree this is an agenda item, and that's fine. There's a commissioner comment section. You got a little more flexibility there. George, you may be the only one that wants to talk about repaving the tennis court. You can bring that up under commissioner comment. That's just you. The clerk prepares the agenda package with oversight from me. Bottom line, I always say it's your meeting. You are elected by the citizens. You vote. You're the government. It's your meeting. If multiple commissioners want it on the agenda, we'll put it on the agenda. Doesn't matter if I like it or not. Doesn't matter if I want to talk about it or not. That's your meeting. So I want to emphasize that. All right. Any questions on what we've covered so far?
Question on those items that you talked about, like the directors of Social Security, Social Services responding to their board. What type of liaison do you have with those boards?
Well, the Social Services Board has commissioners on that board. There's 3 members, and one of them is one of the county commissioners. So that's Larry Prince currently.
Right.
And I attend most Social Services Board meetings, but not all of them.
Okay.
So it's more informal, open communication, thing. They go into closed session, for instance, to give Lisa her review. I don't stick around for that, So.
I would say any board that we fund or have appropriations for has one of the members of the committee. That's our representation directly. It's not going through a party.
Well, along those lines, I would just be thinking that since all of those boards have a major budgetary impact, that there would be close contact, and I'm
Oh, yeah.
assuming that there is,
Yeah.
for you to develop your budget.
Mhm.
Without that, you're a fish out of water.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else? All right, well, let's take a quick 5-minute break and refuel. And 10:05, so 10:10, I will see you back here. Anyone regretting their decision to run so far? That's good. Wait one more minute. Who are we missing here? Where? Yeah. Give them another minute here. So, assume everybody knows we are filming this for ACTV to run on the local channel. So we're always looking for material. big believer in ACTV. It's a great program for the students there. We got, I know one of them Creston just got a full scholarship to ETSU to, she's going to be hosting an on-campus news show, which is awesome. So, see her on 6 o'clock news here in a few years. So.
When I was an instructor, I determined that we have a broadcasting program there. We have our own campus TV program. It's set for our students to look through that, and on the local news, channels, other places, and now some of them are in bigger stations that we more.
That's still riding horses like I used to.
It's great. I mean, it gives
It's all about
gives a lot of these young
It
people.
hurts now.
Yeah. I love to have one. I used to really enjoy riding. But my wife, she don't like to ride. You know, you just have to go off.
Yeah, I mentioned at our last commissioners meeting, the idea of live streaming our meetings went over with a big thud at the County Commissioners Association. They didn't, or the city manager, so everybody thought that was a bad idea, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it's something I'm very passionate about, and I appreciate the board being open-minded to that. Well, talk to county, they don't even film their meetings. Grayson County, they don't film their meetings. You know, they don't film them at all. So I'm confident within the next 5 to 7 years, the sunshine laws will be changed, and you'll be required to at least film your meetings. But it's not the case now.
To me, film showing us, having it available to the public. Get more interactive. And to me, that's a great way to run a county government, is to have as much, I mean, if we're gonna be a representative democracy, we want to get everybody involved.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun to flip around the TV and see yourself on there, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about the direct roles of county commissioners. So now we'll talk a little bit about finances, budget, things like that over the next few minutes here. So, some of the services the county provides: social services, all that child welfare. We have the jail, law enforcement, emergency management, disaster recovery. We've got the library that we partially fund, building inspections, transfer station, all of our parks, fairgrounds, a lot of different services that we provide. Ambulance service, I don't have it listed on here. Annual budget is governed by the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act. All revenues collected and expenditures made must be a part of the budget ordinance. That requires frequent budget amendments from time to time. So if we anticipate spending $100,000 this year on heating oil, we're going to have to spend $110,000. There'll have to be a budget amendment approved by the county commissioners to raise that to $110,000 before we could pay for that last bit of heating oil, for example. Our budget must be balanced, but doesn't necessarily, you can borrow from reserve to balance it, which that's maybe the case this year. So, but you can't run a true deficit. So you basically, if your revenues don't equal your expenses, then you can borrow from reserve. That's why we have reserve from the good years. Okay. Our fiscal year, of course, runs July 1 through June 30. And as county managers, I am statutorily assigned the role of budget officer. Our current situation, current year's general fund budget is $17.5 million. Does everybody understand what I mean by general fund? Governmental accounting is what's called fund accounting. The general fund is the primary fund. All the day-to-day stuff is done in the general fund. So building inspection fees, tax collections, paying most of the salaries billed, most of that comes through the general fund. We have other funds. Another category of fund is called an enterprise fund, which that is a fund that's supposed to be run like a business. The transfer station is an enterprise fund. It has to be self-sufficient. We don't have water and sewer in the county. The town does. So town water and sewer is an enterprise fund for the town. It's supposed to break even theoretically. I mean, you can't do it every single year, but you can't run a deficit 5 years in a row in your water budget, or you'll be in trouble. Okay. We have about $7 million in long-term debt right now. Most of that is school-related, and we'll look a little more detail on that in a minute. Of course, that includes $1,375,000 we just borrowed a few months ago for the Sparta school renovations. Last year, we showed a small surplus. This year, we're projecting a shortfall. So the last 3 years, we're up about $400,000. We're projecting we're going to give some of that back this year. Tax rate. Does anybody have, you want to look at anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Tax rate is 51.25 cents, which is quite low. I know it doesn't always feel that way when you write your check every year, but it is quite low statewide. State median is 68 cents, so we have the 14th lowest tax rate in the state. Would love to keep it there or reduce it forever, but I'm not sure how feasible that is. Real and personal property taxes are about half of our revenue, just about half. Each penny of property tax is about $165,000 in revenue, to give you a round number there, 165, 170, something like that. Okay. So our general fund revenue breakdown, certain things you could put in a couple of different categories. Of course, property taxes, that includes automobile taxes as well. That's our primary source. Sales taxes, that's an area that's really improved the last 2 or 3 years, and we're running over budget. We're going to have more than we budgeted this year as well. We get sales taxes several different ways. We get locally collected sales tax in Alleghany County. We get a bigger piece of that pie, but we get a piece of all the sales tax collected in North Carolina as well. We get a smaller piece of that. So I say if you can't buy it in Sparta, go to Jefferson or Mount Airy rather than Galax if you can, because we don't get a piece of that sales tax in Galax. But I know Galax is really close, and I go there myself sometimes. But try to keep it in North Carolina if you can.
I would add a comment there. Buy it here if you can, you'll save a quarter of a cent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Versus our surrounding counties in North Carolina. Because they have all adopted, what you do by, voters have to do, a quarter cent additional sales tax for local. We don't have that, they do. So hopefully that'll help folks stay here a little bit, or not.
Grants and reimbursements category, most of that is social services. We get a lot of social services reimbursed by federal or state. We also apply for grants. There's a grant that's going to be before the board at our next meeting to pay approximately half the cost of a second school resource officer, for example. Sheriff Department gets a lot of grants. Transfer station, we get a lot of grants over there to help us dispose of tires and hazardous chemicals and stuff like that. Fees for services, that's your building permit fees, your register of deeds, recording fees, things like that. Transfers from other funds, that's just accounting, you don't need to worry about that. Other is everything else. The property that we're selling, we've got 2 properties we're selling, that'll be other revenue there. It doesn't really fit in any other category. And if we would do borrow from reserve, that would be a part of that as well. And of course, I'm using, yeah.
Who researches and writes all the grants for the county?
There's no one individual. Some of them are, this is the right way to say it, some of them are less complicated. Department heads, Josh writes 4 or 5 himself every year for the transfer station. They're very simple, and it's almost 100% guarantee you're going to get it. Sometimes we have the High Country Council of Governments in Boone. They have 2 full-time people. That's their primary job. They help us with more complicated ones sometimes. So just anybody, it's all hands on deck when it comes to a grant. Nick Hawks in the Sheriff's Department, he writes a lot of their grants. Does a good job. So just whoever is qualified.
If I could interject something there. General trend towards General Assembly and grants in the state of North Carolina, and also the federal government's beginning to go away. We used to get a grant for our white goods because we have to recover the Freon from any white good that has Freon in there. The state of North Carolina quit funding that on 30 June 2017. So that grant has gone away. Cost of our transfer station is going to go up. So they are shifting more and more towards the local governments. And yeah, I think that is a trend, especially under the Trump administration, that will continue.
So where does the money go? Again, we're talking general fund here. North Carolina Constitution says all government spending should serve a, quote, public purpose. Okay, that's the key phrase. It's been interpreted by the courts as a limitation on government spending. So a public purpose means it's reasonably connected to some governmental service and it benefits the public generally, does not solely benefit any individual or a small group. Doesn't mean everybody benefits, you know. If the sheriff arrests somebody today, his salary does not benefit the guy he's arresting. He's not getting much value for that, but the rest of us are getting benefit for that. So it doesn't have to benefit every single person, just the most. It cannot benefit anybody individually. Interesting, I grew up in Johnson City, and the city of Johnson City has been providing the city manager a membership to the country club since the 50s. Citizen recently raised a stink about that, saying it did not serve a public purpose. The current city manager he's in his 70s now probably, and he doesn't play golf anymore. And he had not used, the last year, he had not used the meeting room to entertain, he had not used the country club one time. And the citizen raised a stink, and the state auditor made Johnson City stop providing that service effective next year. After 60-some years, they have provided that as an employment perk. So it's interesting because the definition of it changed. You know, golf's a dying sport anyway. And, 30 years ago, they were bringing people in, from the governor's office or companies looking to relocate to play golf. You have dinner. The country club benefit was serving a public purpose, but now it's not. So that was an interesting thing that just popped up recently in Johnson City. Our biggest piece of our pie is education. That is our single biggest line item of expenditure. Of course, we have most of that goes to the county schools, but we also support the community college. Community college enrollment is growing. It will continue to grow. Community colleges, the next 10 or 15 years, are going to be the emphasis. Universities are so expensive. It is amazing. I graduated high school in 1988. Went to ETSU. My mom worked there. So at the time, we got half off tuition. So you got to take that into account. I got a $500 scholarship that paid for all my tuition, all my books, and I had like $40 left over. And it's just amazing. And you can't go to ETSU for $5,000 now. It's just amazing how expensive the university is now. So, of course, we had the announcement yesterday, the official kickoff of the campaign for the Diesel and Welding Center. So we're excited about that project. We provided $75,000 matching bond funds for that. We also increased our investment this year to about $240,000 to the community college. We also provide them their building rent-free, and our janitor, our maintenance guys do the maintenance. So there's other non-cash contributions as well. Now, ASH gives them significantly more money than we do. That's neither good nor bad. It's just a statement of facts there. Sparta school renovations are well underway now. I can't believe we've gotten away without having an elevator in that school until now. That's amazing to me. But anyway, I'm glad it's in there. So full ADA compliance is incredibly important in public buildings, you can't have City Hall, you can't have the school that someone can't get into. It's just incredibly important. So the work's about half done as of right now. I mentioned our funding per student, about $1,952 per student. We increased that 5% in this current year's budget. That's the per student number, not the overall number, but the per student number. You see how we compare to Ashe County. We spend significantly more per student than does Ashe County. There's a lot of reasons for that we won't go into today. I'm not saying, any large organization has pockets of inefficiency. there's some, you could go down anybody's budget and find, why did you spend $10 on this when you should have spent $5? School board's the same way, county government's the same way, the James family budget's the same way. There's pockets of inefficiency everywhere.
I would add to there is, as you see some of this information, be careful not to quickly assume you know why the numbers are what they are without, rolling up your sleeves and kind of digging into them and see, because that's one of the areas I've been kind of surprised at. The number doesn't really appeal to me. It seems like that the percentage is a little out of balance compared to our neighbor. But as Mike said, there's usually things under there that comes along with it. And, it would behoove you to be careful about what you say until you know for sure kind of why it's there the way it is and stuff. So just for what it's
And I would add on that, one of the things, and I'll be quick to tell you that I let my bulldog mouth overload my puppy dog Fanny in this regard. Whenever I was running, you asked why were we doing this? And just to give you an example, in the past, John Woodruff was great. If we had a student with disabilities, then all of a sudden, all the classes that were being held would go to the bottom facility, so that we didn't have to build an elevator. Now, what the school board was faced last year that was briefed to us, we've got 2 students, separate grades, that are in wheelchairs. They have disabilities, and we didn't have a bathroom that met the ADA requirements. We did not have an elevator, and one family had said, provide for my student or my child, or we will see you in court. Now, once we go to court, and they would have won, then that judge will tell us what we are going to do to meet the ADA compliance, and we will get the check, and we will have no ability to determine what we're going to do or build. So this is one of the areas whenever I was sitting there and I heard the superintendent of schools say, this is the situation that we are in right now. We've been able to avoid it in the past. Call it kicking it down the road, but you can also call it, now we have to face up to reality, and we're going to have to take into consideration these things. I stepped into that mud puddle, and guess what? There was a bear trap at the bottom that I couldn't see for the muddy water. So ask. People will be glad to give the information. And 9 times out of 10, whenever I've done that, I've scratched my head and said, well, that makes sense. Now I know why you're doing it. And that is problems you're going to face if you're elected.
Yeah, I'm a numbers guy. But we have a small county. I love it here, but we have a small denominator when we do any fractions. And so if you're looking at population, you look at population of students, we're dividing the same amount of fixed costs by a smaller number of people. So if you look strictly at finances, maybe we're not as efficient as some other counties, but the electric bill cost, the electric bill of Glade Creek School is going to be the same whether there's 300 kids in it, 250 kids in it, 350 kids. The electric bill is going to be the same. So things like that. Small county has some advantages, has some disadvantages. That's one of the disadvantages is we don't get to extrapolate our fixed costs over as many people.
What type of funding do you get inputted by the educational lottery?
We'll discuss that off camera at another time.
Exactly what I expect. Exactly what I
Does the laughter give you an indication?
Absolutely.
On the record, I will say we appreciate the education lottery. Every dollar we get from it is very much appreciated.
Your opinion is the same as mine.
Well, and annually, locally, it does contribute about $100,000. So, there's money coming in from it. Now, percentage to the total operation of the lottery system, we're getting a great education out of how it's actually working. It's somewhere around 17 to 20%. As I understand it, I could be wrong, don't quote that, do your own homework.
And I understand that, and I agree that it does provide a great basis for education. but that's not a drop in the bucket of what school systems have to spend on infrastructure, teacher salary, students with disabilities and everything else. And for what that was sold to the public for, it's not even a drop.
Well, at least though, like 9 months after we started the lottery, the first lottery commissioner was indicted, you know,
Yeah.
so that would, you gotta remember that too.
That speaks volumes.
One quick add is our North Carolina legislation is having a robust discussion regarding our capital needs across the state for our schools. They realize we have a lot of aging schools. Where that will go, I don't know, but as commissioners, we are invited to come down on, at least once a year. Of course, we can call our representatives as taxpayers and everything, but that's some discussion that I've been involved with, and I know that there is, our legislators are having a robust discussion. As I say, what the results will be, they'll be, but I think it'll be better than nothing, at least, we'll see. So what that'll help us locally will be something, but usually, because I feel like we're kind of a misfit, this county is, its size, we're out of proportion everywhere, but we love every bit of help we can get, no matter how big or how small. And we try to leverage those dollars as best we can. And education is important to this county, and that number, I think, will substantiate.
You know, like teacher salaries are paid by the state. Some counties, most counties have some kind of local supplement. Ours is minimal, but that's okay. That's neither good nor bad. But most of the operational costs of the schools are on us, and we have old school buildings. That's not a criticism of anyone. It's a statement of fact. They are old buildings. They're less energy efficient and everything else than they need to be, but replacing them is incredibly expensive as well. So that's a challenge for the next board and the board after that to worry about. Okay, so this is our school debt here. So about $5.5 million roughly of our approximately $7 million of debt is school. So you can see the breakdown there. So school debt per student is about $4,000 per student we owe in debt. About $500, $545 annual debt payment per student for the school debt. Good thing about school debt, a lot of it is at 0% interest through different state programs. That helps a little, I guess. But, that's the projected enrollment this year. About 1,365 students in total. All right, next piece, human services, social services. We have 25, that's our largest department. We have 25 employees in the social services department. All the different programs they offer, from protective services, child care assistance, child support enforcement, food nutrition, all that. Roughly 2/3 of our total operating cost is reimbursed by either the federal government or the state government. Still our tax dollars, but it's just not our direct local tax dollars. It's a little over $1 million net county expense in social services. And again, I say this is the most misunderstood department that we have. So we've all been in a line at the grocery store and seen somebody that looks young and healthy, and they have their food and nutrition card, and we've looked at them for 2 seconds, and we're not a physician, but we deem them healthy and able to work, and they should be working, right? That's why that's a very misunderstood program. It is a form of economic development. There are tens of millions of dollars that come from the federal and state government here, Medicaid and other things, and they're spent locally or regionally at least. So it does, it's not a one-way street like you think it is. All that money, child support, child support enforcement is not tax dollars. That's paid by the other parent. They live out of town. We get that money here. They're going to go to Grants or Food Line or Walgreens or wherever and spend that money locally. Next piece, law enforcement. We have 14 deputies and then our sheriff. We have 5 full-time dispatchers in the 911, 10 full-time jailers, which they also transport the inmates as well, which is a big piece because the female prisoners and the juveniles are not housed here locally. We have to transport them to other areas. So the transportation of inmates is a big issue here. The inmate population is up about 30% over last year. We do house state inmates, and we get paid for that, so that helps a little. The increase is primarily locally. The number of state inmates is about the same as it always is.
We're housing federal inmates.
Not currently, no. They have new regulations 4 or 5 years ago, and we would have to do some improvements to meet the standards for Fed, and it's not worth the investment, quite frankly. As long as there's a pool of state inmates to house, it's not worth the investment. Of course, you look at our buying locally spreadsheet, you see Sparta Family Entertainment's always our largest. That they provide the meals for the jail. That's as far as I know, that's their only business. The Heddlemans, they provide the meals for our jail. So $7 per meal per person. So it's really not bad. I mean, it's 365 days a year: Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and there are very strict, state requirements on the nutritional content, the temperature of the food. So it's a tough job. We put it out for bid every few years, and that's usually the only bid that we get back, and they're doing a great job. And it's a good local business, so, fine with that, but it's interesting. Another thing we'll talk about, special appropriations. So the vast majority of our general fund budget, there's not a whole lot we can do about it, quite frankly. The schools, you could cut a little maybe, but the schools cost what they cost. Having an ambulance service costs what it costs. Special appropriations is the one area there's some flexibility. Most of these are not required contributions. Biggest piece of that goes to our volunteer fire departments. One issue the next board has to deal with are the volunteer fire departments. We've got this, not just Alleghany County, it's everywhere. The silver tsunami is hitting the fire departments. They're aging out. They don't have enough members to keep going. Fire department needs 20 certified firefighters, and we have at least 2 that are well under 20 right now. Next time there's a review, they're going to be in trouble.
Can I expand on that
Sure.
a little bit? I am the chair of the fire committee. The problems that we're facing with volunteer fire departments right now, if the Department of Insurance comes in and the state fire marshal inspects 2 departments today, they would lose certification and you would lose fire insurance coverage. The average age of the first truck out on the fire departments in this county is 27 years. We have one department that is averaging a run a day because they border another county and they are doing mutual aid calls in that other county. If they take their brush truck out, that truck was declared surplus and from the state of North Carolina over 20 years ago. It is 35 years old. By mandate, each volunteer fire department, that air pack that you see on the back of that volunteer fireman that goes into a fire must be replaced every 5 years. What was it that we heard that the replacement cost was the other day? I believe Independence that just replaced all of their fire packs, $8,500 a pack.
If they change the requirement for replacement of all turnout gear.
All turnout gear must be replaced every 5 years to a cost of about $7,000. The tires on that fire truck must be replaced every 5 years. Piney Creek was going down the road about 18 months ago. Right front tire blew out on a fire truck. They hit the ditch, had damage. The insurance company refused to pay it because the tire was 6 years old.
Yeah, we're in the brainstorming session right now where we're trying to work with the chiefs and how can we help them more. And it's besides money's always an important factor in any equation in life, but it's not only money. How do we help them recruit members? So they've submitted some ideas. We've been kicking around. We've got the new county maintenance garage. Maybe we can help them with some auto maintenance. We're kicking around ideas right now. But we've got we've got issues with the volunteer fire departments. We may have to study some kind of a paid, some paid firemen make the Sparta, a municipal fire. There's a lot of ideas. We're going to have to do something, because Sparta's the one that's in the most trouble with members.
Right, just so we don't get something going here, we would not really lose insurance, we would lose our current rate.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I misspoke on that.
Yeah.
But that's clear.
My apologies, and by the way, every fire call, Sparta gets particular attention because every fire call in this county, Sparta Volunteer Fire Department must respond because it is centrally located. Whenever there's a fire call in Allegheny County, 3 departments are called out so that we can ensure that we will have enough firefighters on scene to fight a fire. So Sparta's worked to death.
Yeah. Rescue squad, same problem. They're down in members, and Carroll is their most active member, but he works for us in the ambulance service. So if Carroll's working for us, there's the rescue squad backup is not always available. So that's a problem we run into. You see the other areas that we fund as well. So the official financial statement of the county is called the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Review or Report. It is required by general statute there. We have to have an audit conducted by an independent CPA, and that is the detailed financial statement. It's 70, 80-page document, something like that. We consistently receive an unqualified audit opinion, which that's what you want. That's the best finding you can get. Few, if any, findings. We're never going to have 0 findings. We're so small, we can't have this proper separation of duty that auditors would prefer because we just don't have enough bodies to spread the work around, All right, so some of the challenges upcoming in the budget for the next board to think about. Continue replacing aging equipment and vehicles. And again, this is not to criticize anybody. The recession hit everybody hard. Every county's tax revenue went way down for several years. You couldn't buy new cars. You couldn't make the repairs to buildings you needed to make. And now they're all stacked up. The ones we would have had to make this year anyway, plus the ones we didn't make the previous year. So those are all out there. The courthouse, which we'll talk more about that in a minute. So that's hanging out there. That's the herd of elephants in the room. That's not just the elephant. That's the herd of elephants in the room. Health insurance costs. We got our initial quote back. It's going to be over $300,000 increase in our health insurance premium next year. So we're working on trying to get it's going to be a 6-figure increase, best case we can do. We're trying to get that work on that. But again, having a small group, we have about 120 insured folks. Couple of big claims, there's not enough healthy people to spread it, to amortize it across, and that's what we're up against. We had a couple of really large, way into 6-figure claims this year, and it just, we don't have enough bodies to spread it out over. Karen and I have talked to, I don't know how many insurance vendors and things like that. We talked to Mecklenburg County, one of their assistant county managers and their HR director. They have 12,000 insured on their medical insurance. And that's just the county employees, that's not the city employees. We don't even have 12,000 citizens in the county. They have 12,000 people on their insurance plan. Phase 2 is Sparta School, that's the auditorium and some exterior renovations, That's something that's hanging out there. Office renovations and social services, we pretty much got that one under control at this point. The last board, the one that Larry was on, commissioned a study of employee compensation. See how we were losing firefighter, or we were losing ambulance folks, and we were losing deputies left and right to surrounding counties. Commissioned a pay study. They found we were underpaid by such a large margin you couldn't bring it up in 1 year. We had to ramp it in over 4 years. So coming up this next year will be year 3, which is the largest of the 4 years. Good news is that it's really helped with attrition. We don't lose our ambulance folks and deputies very much, at least for pay anyway. So, You would drive from Sparta to go to work in Mount Airy or Wilkesboro for $10,000 a year in pay, but you probably may not do it for $2,000 or $3,000 a year in pay. So we're much closer to other surrounding counties now. Last couple of folks we've lost, if it's been, spouse got a job somewhere else, that kind of thing. So that's a good thing. Employee morale is good right now. So for the most part, we got a pretty happy staff. Of course, who knows what else might come up. You just don't know what's gonna come up. All right. So one of the last topics today, we'll kind of talk about some current events. What's going on right now? Of course, the courthouse we just talked about. A little background. We started about this time last year. The judges approached us, asked us to study the possibility of a second courtroom. We talked about ADA compliance at the school. The judges never brought this up, but our courtroom has no ADA compliance. I mean, somebody in a wheelchair can't get to the witness stand, they can't get to the jury box, they can't even really get to any of the seats. So it's terrible there, but they didn't actually bring that up. That wasn't what they wanted to talk about. But yeah? No? No?
Well, the reason he didn't bring it up, it's a heritage building, and there's no requirement to bring it up in the future.
Yeah, we're exempt from it because of the historical designation, but that doesn't help you if you're in a wheelchair. That doesn't help you get to your seat. Court is like our commissioner meetings, is supposed to be open to the public. Anyone can attend. That's not the case right now. Some people can't attend. Okay. Anyway, get off that for a minute. So where we are right now, there was a special called meeting November the 9th. Some of you may have been here or may have watched the replay. Had a 90-day comment period. So the commissioners have decided to create a citizens advisory committee to help us make that recommendation. And the plan is for the next commissioners meeting, the 19th, that those citizens will be named to that committee. That's the plan. And over the next 6 months or so, we'll flesh out our different options. We're going to build on the old courthouse. We're going to renovate some other building. We're going to build a whole new courthouse, or going to do nothing. So that's kind of the 4 buckets of categories that we have right now. Economic development, a lot of my background, I'm very passionate about it. Our current board is very passionate about it. Just some of the recent things we've done. We had $20,000 in incentives we paid to Grant Supermarket for store opening expenses. We only paid about half of that. We got some of our friends in the community, other businesses to chip in. So most of them asked to remain anonymous, but we only had to pay about half of that. We had 2 companies we've assisted with grant matches, NAPCO and Glade Creek Animal Hospital. They got grants to help renovate their buildings. There's a 5% local match required for that. That's based on job creation. We have about $80,000 in the budget for economic development expenses, and we will continue to recruit new businesses and assist local businesses to expand. It's a big part of what we do as local government. We're not going to get General Motors to build a plant here. It's not going to happen. But somebody that's already here, if we help them go from 5 jobs to 10 jobs, or somebody open a business, those are the kind of things we want to do. Some upcoming construction projects we've got. The assisted living facilities going down the corner of 21 and Chestnut Grove Church Road. They're expected to start around September. That'll be about a year project. We're very excited about that. The Bottomley Housing Project, they're going to start on that in May, late April, early May. There's going to be 5 units built eventually. They're going to build either 2 or 3 this year, and then either 2 or 3 next year. So just met with Mitchell and Tracy about that the other day. Of course, the college, the diesel and welding building, will start on that later this year. Streetscape's underway, and of course the streetscape rather starting in the spring. I think they just changed the date. I didn't have the exact date, so I just throw spring up there. That's nice and vague.
And that is the town's project.
Yeah, that's a town project. And of course, we're not building the assisted living facility either. These are just projects. We're not doing anything with Bottomley either. We're putting no money into that. Just some good projects we have going on here locally. Of course, the bypass is going to be finished very soon as well. Another big issue we've been working on is the county branding and marketing. I want to spend a couple of minutes on that if you haven't been exposed to this. We've got a new county logo, which I love. Storyboards developing, and we're kind of going to be marketing the county to 3 primary groups of people. So the second homeowners or potential second homeowners, visitors to the parkway, and the natives that grew up here, moved off to Atlanta or Charlotte or Raleigh or wherever to make their fortune. Now they're ready to retire. So we want to market our county. So this is the new logo, which I really, really like. So over the next 6 months or a year, we're going to transition vehicles, name badges, everything, or business card. We're going to transition that. I'm not going to do it all at once. Just, as the vehicle comes in for maintenance, the guys will change out the logos and things like that. So we're going to transition that over the next year or so. See the other part of the story, authentically Allegheny. That was the slogan that we came up with. An example on some business cards. So we've got 5 different stories we're going to tell in our marketing. Basically, our story is we are Boone, Blowing Rock, and Bannerell before the Yankees and Floridians moved in and ruined it. That's our story. Okay. So we're the last unspoiled part of the Blue Ridge. So we want to emphasize food and agriculture. So interesting, 10, 15 years ago in economic development, you downplayed or hid agriculture in your county because nobody wants to move to a cow town, right? They're not going to build a factory in a cow town. But now we really want to emphasize that's part of who we are. 2 cows for every person. I love that. I'm not a farmer, but I love being surrounded by cows. I've always liked cows. So that's a big part of the story. That's a big part of who we are. That's our number 1 industry by far is agriculture. There is no number 2. I mean, that's number 1 by far. The New River, right now today, technically there's no public access to the New River in Allegheny County, but we're close to that. The state has acquired some property, and that'll be done sometime this summer. So there was a piece of property up on Farmer's Fish Camp, and basically they were waiting for Grandma to die, and she has died now, and the kids are donating it to the state for a public river access there. So that'll be great. Of course, our mountain arts and culture, the music, pottery, all that kind of thing. So we have a great story to tell there. Of course, the Parkway, heart of the Blue Ridge Parkway is one of our, it'll be on our logo. Center of the Parkway is here in the county. And of course, our industry represented by the Choose and Cut Christmas tree business. Interesting, Extension estimates we cut between 1.5 and 1.9 million trees this year. Only about 80,000 of those or so are Choose and Cut. But that's a better story to tell. That's a great, Kathy Shore's shipping off 100,000 trees to Guatemala. That's not a sexy story to tell, right? But getting the kids in the station wagon and driving up to Sparta and choosing a tree and cutting it, that's a great story. So that's going to be more of our marketing story there. All right. Our last topic today, conduct and ethics. We'll talk a little bit about that. So the only education you are required to undergo as a newly elected commissioner is an ethics course. Within 6 months of election or re-election, you have to go through the state's ethics course. They usually offer it several places around the county. Last year it was the one snowstorm we got was right when they were all being offered, and I know Larry and John had to rearrange 2 or 3 times.
No, we drove back in the snowstorm, and it was 2 days we had to make up.
That's the only time it snowed all winter,
The afternoon, they fed us lunch and said go home, so we caught 2 inches of snow getting back.
So I was commuting, all last winter I was commuting from Mountain City, Tennessee over here over the mountain, and I never had any problem at all. There was hardly any snow at all last winter. So, the governing body, you can adopt your own personal code of conduct, which the current Board of Commissioners does have, which can, again, give more detail on it as how you're on actions and what Robert's Rules of Order, that kind of thing. So you guys can do that on your own if you wish. Let's talk about voting. As a county commissioner, you have a duty to vote every time something is up for vote. You cannot abstain because it's a hot item. You cannot abstain because your wife wants you to vote one way and your mama wants you to vote the other way. You cannot abstain for that reason. The only reason, there are very limited times you can abstain if there's some kind of financial interest you have in the issue. Like Michelle, you don't have any ownership interest in Pioneer Eclipse, right? Even if we were voting on something for Pioneer Eclipse, you would still be entitled, you would still be expected to vote on it, even though you work there, you know. The only, if you were 50% owner and we were thinking about a contract with you, that would be different, but you're expected to vote on every item. That's why the folks elect you to do that. They don't elect you to abstain. If you say nothing, though, if they call for votes and you say nothing, you're counted as an aye. Okay. Most actions, of course, require a motion and a second and then a vote. So they'll call for a motion, or someone will make a motion unsolicited, call for a second. If you don't get a second, generally the motion dies. Okay. Again, you have a duty to vote. And of course, the big thing that sticks in everybody's gut is once the board passes, something passes, you're all equally accountable for the decision. If you are the one dissenting vote, you stand up here on the desk and stomp your feet and curse and scream and yell that we're not going to do this, and it passes, you're 1/5 of the board that passed it. That's part of your responsibility as county commissioner. So if it blows up and the county loses money on it or whatever, gets a suit or whatever, you're 1/5 of that. Doesn't matter that you voted no. Okay. All right, I want to spend just a minute here on a quick demo of a couple things on the county website. So we're reworking the county website now to make it more mobile friendly, because most people go to the websites on their mobile device now rather than on their PC, and this is not a mobile friendly version. So we'll have that rolled out here shortly. So a couple things I want to point out right here. To live stream the meetings, you click right here, it'll take you to the YouTube channel to live stream the county meetings. Now, if you click on it right now, the most recent meeting just runs on a continuous loop there until the next meeting. So, your current board packet is right here at this link. If you want to watch the archive of past meetings, you click right here. Our buying locally information we have right here. I said we have right here. There we go. So you can always click on the link here and that'll bring up the spreadsheet. And I update that. We do AP every 2 weeks. And I update this personally and upload it up there so it's everybody that we use. So we have spent in 2 months about $150,000 so far this year. Roughly, January had 3 AP runs the way the calendar fell. So roughly $25,000 to $30,000 every 2 weeks we're spending locally.
What's the 29 at the bottom of it?
Oh, I was counting up how many vendors there were this month. So I should have deleted that before I put that up there. So we had 29 different vendors we used in February. Yeah, we need to institute a business license and get some of that back going. Let's go back to the home page here. Any legal notices are here. So special called meeting, that's our retreat on the 20th there. The upset bids for the properties, all that kind of thing will go there. Press releases, there were 2 articles in the paper this week that were press releases that I wrote. So we like to put out press releases frequently, keep the public informed of what we're doing. So those are all archived here. And then of course we've got properties for sale, we've got the tax sales, things like that, link there. Requests for proposals, we don't have any active right now. We've had our comments box for the courthouse, and this is a replay of that meeting from November the 9th right there on the front. The drawings, and people can put their comments right there. And of course, each of the departments has their own homepage as well. We try to have a a brief biography of the department head in there. So you can see there's mine, there's Lawrence. So, and of course, nice and bright orange on every page is make a payment. If you want to pay us some money, you just click right there, and you can pay your taxes or get a building, pay your building permit fee or whatever. So right there. So we'll make that nice and easy. Okay. All right. Well, that is the material I have today. Does anybody have any questions? Anything else you want to cover? We're right at the hour-and-a-half mark, so.
I would like to just make a comment. I just, as chairman, and I'm not saying this for the board, it's on my behalf, it's, I'm glad and elated to see so many people come out and participate in this. And I want you to know, I do not feel the least bit threatened by anybody. This is a game that we're all in, and it's not really a game, it's very important. And if I can be of any help, but I won't tell you what to do or tell you how to make any decisions. That's not my MO. It's just, I will try to share and interact with you on any way or any questions that you might have if you're trying to find something or whatever. Of course, Mike's the same way, and I think most of our current board will be the same way. So I just want to invite you to know that communication, that door is open, and I would welcome it. I'm challenged with time sometimes, but I will do my very best to try to accommodate you in anything. Because at the end of the season, there's going to be 5 people here. The better we can start communicating now, some of us ain't going to win. And if I'm one of those, I'm okay with that. I can still be a positive contributor to the program in what way I can. Doesn't bother me a bit in the world. In fact, that kind of excites me a little bit. But I just want you to know that I don't feel like I have any enemies whatsoever. I'm sure there's some folks that don't like me, but I please everybody. Some when I start talking and the rest when I shut up. So, but I just want you to know that, extend that out there. And for me, I feel blessed and honored that so many people are coming out and participating. It ain't fun, and it's tough, but, Larry's sitting there, for whatever reason, he's been in these shoes, and here he is back again, offering up this time, and that's to be commended, and I commend every one of you that are here, and those who couldn't be here are just as important. I get an opportunity to see this. At the end of the day, my MO is try to lift the level of communication, and with that, come let us reason together. That's all my MO is, and if I can be of any help to you, don't hesitate to reach out. You want my number. I do have a Facebook. I try not to do I try to keep that just kind of public information, and if it's something you want to talk about one-on-one, you can message me there, we'll get a hold of each other. But I'm willing to help because we're all in this, and if there's anything I can do, just please know I'm with it. And thank you.
I'd like to echo Mark's comments. I will tell you, and I tell anybody that asked me, why in the world did you do this? I waited until 15 minutes at the end of filing to walk in and file because I did not want to give an opposing party a free seat. And lo and behold, I got the most votes of anybody, and I didn't campaign that much. So I was surprised that I ended up in this position, but I resolved that I would do just as my daddy told me, if you're going to be a ditch digger, you be the best ditch digger around. So I dug in my heels and tried to get in and do my due diligence. It's been a rewarding experience and an educational experience. It's one that I have learned from, and I welcome you and your attempts to become a county commissioner. Larry knows what he's getting into, and yet he comes in with eyes wide open. And I'm glad to see you all making the commitment to work for Allegheny County. And one thing that has surprised me with the board, we're diverse, we come from many backgrounds, but we all have one concern, and the way that we have operated in the past couple of years is what is good for Allegheny County, and I'm proud of that. We have our problems, we have our challenges,
And he's my biggest,
and I am his biggest one, and I will admit to it. And that voodoo doll that he's got that he sticks pins in every night does work, because my arthritis has been about to kill me here lately. But I wish you all luck. I wish you the best, and unfortunately, there will be winners and there will be losers. And if you win, I welcome you to the board, and I look forward to working with you. And if you lose, there's always another election.
Try it again in 2 years.
And I say that from experience, because I lost the first time out.
Just a couple more items Mark had asked me to mention. We mentioned the High Country Council of Governments briefly. That is the 7 counties and however many towns are all part of that organization. So they're a regional group. They help us with some planning, grant acquisition, things like that. The Workforce Development Board all runs through them. So they're partners that we will reach out to quite frequently. Other name you need to know is the Local Government Commission, LGC. That is a division of the State Treasurer's Office that is the oversight for local government finances. So we want to borrow a large amount of money. They have to sign off on it. They have to sign off on our audits and our financial statements every year. So that is a part of the State Treasurer's Office that is designed to be oversight for local government finance. So Karen Evans, our finance officer, speaks with them quite frequently. So that's another area of oversight that we have. As you know, county commissioners, you're not going to be dealing with the LGC directly a lot. The High Country Council, you will. 1 or 2 of you will be on that board, and then we'll have events from time to time as well. And they're here frequently. Shane Fox is the director, and Phil True is the director of planning, and he's their senior most employee. And the 2 of them are here, frequently, several times a year, helping us out with projects. So,
great job.
anything else? Anything else anybody want to talk about?
I wish we'd had one of these.
All right, thank you all.